everybody doing? Good. So we're back to studying this tonight, and as the way of last night, we try to keep it. I didn't hear much out of you all last night. That was my fault because I meant to have more commotion in here between us than what we had. So I didn't want it to be a lecture, that's for sure. It's the last thing I want to go to is a lecture to sit through. So in talking about these things that we're talking about, it's very possible that you don't know where you are or what you think about them. And it's also very possible that I'm bringing up stuff that you're saying to yourself, well, I believe that. And not necessarily what I'm saying or going to say. That's okay. You know, there has been so many different thoughts about this stuff that maybe it explains why the church has been so quiet about it. There has been so many, you know, just because I thought that somebody had a certain opinion of them, you know, later they've said some things that prove me wrong, that they really, you know, everybody's got this stuff put together somehow in their mind. And, you know, there's always parts of it that's just very difficult for us to get together. There are people who work through scriptures trying to get those pictures. And so I'm going to put up a video here at first. I just want to make sure you understand, I'm not making fun of anybody, okay? So whenever I'm bringing up these videos, what I'm really doing is showing like how this doctrine kind of plays out, okay? And it's called, I mean, if you want to put a name to most of it, it's called dispensational doctrine. And it was a form of what's called premillennial doctrine. And, you know, those words there, they need their own definitions and stuff put behind them. And, you know, the hardest thing I've ever seen to try to explain to anybody is dispensational doctrine, because just understanding the whole concept. But probably one of the best at explaining that, I'm not trying to tell you to go listening to him or stuff, is John Hagee probably has one of the more thorough dispensational doctrine views of that. Now, his has been quite liquid, if you want to call it, because he has changed that, because it's based on modern day events. So whenever things don't work out, then usually there'll be a change. You know, what I'm going to show you here, I'm showing for a particular reason. I'll explain that here in a second. But know that this is a very recent clip. This dates the time of Hamas, you know, so we're talking, you know, not in the distant past. So you can kind of get an idea for some of the thoughts, and maybe this is something, you might watch this. I'm just going to, you know, later I'll show you why that I believe the Bible teaches some things that throws off this kind of system and thinking. Anyway, Ethan, if we can run that first clip.
Prophecy, because it reveals the power and the wisdom of God to absolutely control the future. Consider the birth of the nation of Israel. Every major prophet in the Old Testament prophesied that God was going to bring Israel back. But then there's the prophet that did even further than that. Israel is God's prophetic clock. When the Jewish people are in Israel, the clock is running. When the Jewish people are out of Israel, the clock is stopped. So historically, let me phrase that. When the Roman army under General Titus surrounded Jerusalem in 70 A.D., they besieged the city of Jerusalem, and 1 million people starved to death. In addition, Titus took 70,000 Jewish men as slaves to Rome to build the Colosseum, where gladiators fought for their lives and Christians were devoured by lions. The prophetic clock stopped and did not start again until May 14, 1948, when the nation Israel was reborn in a day, fulfilling the prophecy of Isaiah in chapter 66, saying, "A nation shall be born in one day." That nation was Israel. It was the greatest miracle since the resurrection of Jesus Christ.
Okay, so just to be fair, I know of many preachers in the Brotherhood who would probably agree with that last statement, and they would start, there's a basic sermon that'll get preached every now and then. You'll hear somebody preach it. It'll be about end-time events. And, and some of these people will tell you the kingdom is here now, but then the description they give you shows that the kingdom is coming. So it's a very confusing view in that sense, in the way that it's often taught. But, that is one of the basic premises for this, was the return of Israel in 1948. Now, in this next clip, he's going to tell a little bit more about some of the names that come up in some of these kind of circles. That's the second one there, Ethan.
The sixth sign of his coming is the king of the north, being Russia. About 2,500 years ago, Ezekiel predicted that Russia would return to power in the latter days and would lead a 10-nation invasion of Israel. This is called the Gog-Magog War. It's 3.5 years after the rapture of the church. As we speak, Russia and Iran are united, and Iran will soon have a nuclear weapon if they don't already have it. Ezekiel 38:15 records this war. "And you shall come from your place out of the north parts, you and many people with you." In other words, Russia is going to bring about 10 nations with them to come against Israel in the latter days. The latter days are right now. The prophet Daniel identifies the ruler who would lead this attack against Israel, the king of the north, Daniel 11:15-35. Ezekiel prophesied that the invading armies would come to Israel from the far north. The far north is not Turkey, it's Russia. Straight up from Jerusalem is Russia. According to Ezekiel, Russia will lead the following nations: Iran, Turkey, Sudan, Germany, and several Islamic nations in this invasion of Israel. What's going to happen? God Almighty will say it's enough. He will send his supernatural power, Ezekiel 39:2, and kill 5 out of 6 of those people who come to destroy Israel.
All right. Probably if you've watched much of those kind of things, you've seen some of that before in what he's talking about and heard the name Russia thrown in. Most of the time anymore, China gets thrown into those things, and it all centers around Israel, as you can tell from what's being said there. So, let me just make a couple of statements again. First of all, anytime that we're talking about the latter days there, we better be careful in asking the question, what are the latter days? Or, the last days of what? That's going to be an important question. And whenever we dig into the Old Testament where these statements are, they never center around anything that had to do with the end of time or the end of the world, but they seem to center around Israel themselves and what would be their last demise is where these things are pointing to. So, with that in mind, we're going to go back and we're going to begin to look, and I've, kind of tried to come up with something to make this all make sense, but we're going to call this the making of a kingdom. And the kingdom we're going to talk about tonight is Israel, okay? Now, let me just also make this statement. I believe, and I think we can show it from Scripture in a solid way from the Old Testament to the New Testament, that what they're looking at and pointing at in Israel is not at all what the Bible's pointing out, okay? I believe that group that's located over there is not exactly anything to do with what the Bible was talking about. So we're going to try to look at that And, like I say, you may come out of here and you say, wow, I just totally disagreed with him. It'll just cause you to dig into your scriptures deeper, so that's a good thing. And, hopefully we all come out learning something that maybe we didn't know, including myself. All right, so the first place we want to look at is Genesis in chapter 12, okay? Now, the reason we're going to Genesis chapter 12, because if we're going to look at the making of a nation here, of Israel, then we have to start with somebody with that. And while we could back up a little further, I don't see any sense. We're going to start with who? Now, Abraham is who we're going to start with. Technically, we're going to start with who? Abram, right? Okay, we got that name change, but that's going to be really hard for me to come off with that. So let's just kind of look here at how things start out. If somebody wants to read for us, Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. Would anybody read that for us? All right, so this is the first time we really see a good look at Abraham and Abram, what it's going to be for a while in Scripture, but I'm going to go with Abraham. And whenever we do, basically he's told to come out of the land, the Ur of the Chaldeans, and go to the land that I'm going to show you. So it's quite a call, really. I mean, pick up and take off and go. That's saying a lot right there for any of us, but he's going to do it. So he's going to take off on a journey, and now we're going to jump because something that we want to see in the story happens in 15. So he's got promises already, kind of things being made, and your name's going to be great, and, all the families on the earth are going to be blessed through you. So there's things God's telling him, but there's a fundamental issue. What's that fundamental issue as he sees it? There's no kids here. So this is a big deal, especially in the time that we're in here. So let's go to chapter 15. I don't know, guys. I hope you all will do this for me because I'm going to ask for some big readings here, and I'm just not, I'm not that person. 1 through 18. If anybody would take off and read that for us. You'll do that? Thank you very much.
After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision, saying, "Do not fear, Abram. I am a shield to you. Your reward shall be very great." Abram said, "O Lord God, what will you give me, since I am childless, and the heir of my house is Eleazar of Damascus?" And Abram said, "Since you have given no offspring to me, one born in my house is my heir." Then behold, the word of the Lord came to him, saying, "This man will not be your heir, but one who will come forth from your own body, he shall be your heir." And he
Man, I wish I could read that good, guys. You know, I'm still on that little first grade book, you know, that. No, that's awesome. I wish I could read that smooth. I'm very self-conscious whenever I read. They said that about me in second grade, so I haven't got past there. That's impressive, smooth. Good job. That doesn't mean I wouldn't say about all you too. Okay, if you read, that's fine. All right, guys, what we're reading here is a covenant that's happening, okay? And this covenant, you know, what causes this is he wonders, how's this going to happen? And he's like, well, you know, he's thinking, who's going to be who's it going to? Is it my servant? And then God says, no, it's going to be one of your own. And he basically has him get what animals?
3-year-old heifer, 3-year-old female goat, ram, turtle dove, and a pig.
Okay, and there's the picture of them on the board. That was the only one I could find, and I certainly wasn't going to try drawing it myself because all I do is stick people. So basically, in a covenant of this time frame, they would cut animals like this, and the two parties would walk amongst the two. You wouldn't walk amongst them, you'd walk in between them. So this differs a little bit, and you know, I understand in this covenant 100%. I'm just going to say this. It looks like this Abraham covenant is all on God. Abraham's part is the faith to believe God, and God is going to do the rest. And basically, whenever you're doing this kind of oath right here, and you saw that, what was it, a smoking, flaming onion. It wasn't a flaming onion, I'm sure. It was an oven, right? And a torch, right? Did I get that right? Am I getting that messed up? Yes. Okay. All right, a smoking oven and a flaming torch goes somehow through this thing. Obviously, that's representing God is going through this covenant. But the covenant meant, okay, what just happened to these animals? If I don't keep my covenant, it should happen to me. That's the basic thought behind the covenant. So Abraham now, you know, moves from hearing these things to actually in a covenant with God. And now we're going to jump to 17. Because we're just looking, and you can go back and kind of look at these yourself. This is the big markers of whenever things are happening in the covenant. So in chapter 17, in verse 1 there, it says, when Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I am God Almighty, walk before me and be blameless, that I may make my covenant between me and you, and may multiply you greatly. Then Abram fell on his face, and God said to him, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be the father of, I have a multitude of nations right there. No longer shall you be called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, for I have made you the father of a multitude of nations. Now, throughout that's if there's anything worth underlining, it's that multitude of nations statement. And you've got access to Hebrew things to look it up from Strong's and different. It's worth looking up those couple of words right there. One is another word for Gentiles right there on the nations. And multitude is an interesting word because it can even stand for fullness right there. Look it up and you'll see what I'm talking about. Just don't do it right now. Make a mark in your notes. Anyway, the blessing. All right, so there's this blessing that God basically has given to Abraham. And Abraham is going to pass that blessing down. He's going to pass it down to Isaac, his son. Now you know that Abraham and Sarah, especially Sarah, wasn't 100% convinced that she was ever going to have a child, and it was understandable so. But you know, she tells that Abram is to sleep with her handmaid. Remember that, Hagar? And they have a son, and that son's name is what? Ishmael. But God is not going to recognize that as the child of promise. You know, that Ishmael's not going to be the child of promise. It's going to be one from Abraham and Sarah. So, we know that much of the story, so it's Isaac. And if we look in Genesis 25, verse 11, and somebody read that for us. It's a good name for a town. All right. Now, real quick, jump over to Genesis 26, and will somebody read 3 through 5 right there.
Dwell in this land, and I will be with you and bless you. For you and your descendants I give all these lands. I will perform the oath which I swore to Abraham your father. And I will make your descendants multiply as the stars of heaven. I will give to your descendants all these lands. And in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge and my statutes in my law.
Okay, so Abraham, the blessing, once he has passed away, God blesses Isaac, and it's the blessing. It's moving down to Isaac, and then it's going to move. Isaac is going to have a couple of kids. Do you remember who Isaac's children are? Okay, his children are Jacob and Esau. Now, excuse my writing, by the way. I've got more writing to go. That really that's an O right there, just in case there's any question about it. You know, not everybody makes a good O or any other letter, you know, okay? Give me a break up. I'll sit down if y'all keep looking at me like that. Just kidding. Well, see, the two... All right, so I never mastered writing either. Let me just say this. Jacob and Esau, which one is older? Esau is older. But this is a story you guys are well familiar with. Now, I've got the scriptures listed down in there, but I don't want to particularly have to read this part. There's a story in here about the birthright. Okay? Now, Esau was older, so he got the birthright. And actually, you know, God explains that birthright a little better in the law, and I didn't leave any text for that. But basically, that first child seems to get a double portion. Okay? And what else that could mean, I'm not exactly sure in bigger terms. But Jacob and Esau, how does that birthright switch from Esau to Jacob? Stew, right? Yeah, it was a meal, and Jacob is cooking. He seems to be the cook. Esau's out hunting. Esau comes in, I'm starving to death. Yeah, and Jacob, you know, boy, he's a thinker, isn't he? Yeah, sure, I'll give you a bowl of soup if you'll trade me your birthright for it. And I don't know how hungry you can be, but, you know, basically he's like, what good is that birthright going to do me if I'm dead? So, yeah, I'll trade you my birthright for it. So he trades that birthright out. And obviously, it must be somewhat important, or else it wouldn't have brought it up that this had happened here. So Jacob gets the birthright of his brother Esau. But then we have another event that takes place. It seems that Isaac's wife, who is Rebekah, has remembered something that was said about the older serving the younger. So she kind of remembers this, and it comes time that Isaac is, you know, he's getting ready to die. He can't hardly see, and that blessing needs to move on. So he has to give his blessing, and he's going to give that blessing to which one? He's going to give it to Esau. That's his plan, because Esau is older, and he's going to give it to Esau. But Rebekah, she kind of gets involved in this. And she gets Jacob to dress up, basically put hair on himself so he's like his brother, and she fixes a stew like his brother would fix for his dad, because that's what they're going to do. They're kind of having an event here. And let's go to Genesis chapter 27, and let's pick up at verses 26 through 30 here. Oh, and somebody read that for us. Okay.
Then his father Isaac said to him, "Please come close and kiss me, my son." So he came close and kissed him, and when he smelled the smell of his garments, he blessed him and said, "See, the smell of my son is like the smell of the field, which the Lord has blessed." How far did you say?
To 30.
Now may God give you of the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth, and an abundance of grain and new wine. May people serve you and nations bow down to you. Be master of your brothers, and may your mother's son bow down to you.
Okay, you have to read the rest of the story yourself, but just for short, Esau is not happy because he comes over and he wants a blessing, and Isaac realizes he's been had. And what's amazing about this is you would think, and I would think in my thoughts, well, if it was not what Isaac wanted, why don't Isaac just go back and change it? Doesn't appear that's a possibility. Once it's done, it's done. So he's basically, and Isaac really wondered about this. He's like, he wanted him to come closer. And that's whenever he said, oh yeah, well, you smell and you're Esau. So, but he wasn't Esau, and we know it was Jacob, and he blesses Jacob. So now, basically, and then Jacob went on the run. You remember that? Esau like, nuh-uh, I'm going to kill him if I see him. And Jacob basically leaves with the birthright and the blessing. So he's got them both. Now, there's some scripture references here that we could look at, and that's in Genesis 35. And what this is God giving Jacob the blessing. Now, there is no short run to Jacob's life, but his story takes up several chapters, and it's very interesting. In fact, Jacob is very earthy. He's a lot like you and me. He seems to be very unsettled, especially in the first part of his life. He marries the wrong woman. Well, he didn't mean to, but he did, and then he has to serve his father-in-law for 7 more years because basically his father-in-law says, look, like you can't take the younger daughter who was who? Rachel, but you got to marry Leah, okay? And, so that whole deal went down. And then and then there's the whole deal with the animals. It's like everything Jacob touches, God blesses. But Jacob sees, there's one vision he has with a ladder, and there is descending and ascending back and forth up that ladder. And the other match is pretty interesting. And what's that right there? There's a little picture of it. I couldn't find one that really suited me, so I thought that was best. What's going on in that? He's wrestling against that angel. And, I mean, that's just a mystery scene in itself in trying to understand exactly what's going on. During all this, and finally confirmed by God, Jacob's name is actually changed to Israel. Now, that can be a little bit confusing in Scripture because there's times you're reading we're talking about Jacob himself. But there's times we're talking about Jacob Israel. And that'll float back and forth. Sometimes Israel is Jacob, the person, and sometimes, most of the time, Israel is a nation. But sometimes Jacob is referred to not just as a person, but also a nation. Okay? So some of those things kind of run back and forth. But mostly we know the story of Jacob. So now we're going to get into something a little more fun for our class. So I'm going to get Gina to come up here since you all have already made fun of my writing. All right, so Gina's going to come here to the board, and she's going to help me, and she's going to help you. She's not going to help me. Because what I want you to do, great. Oh, here it is. Here it is. No, the eraser. Okay. Yeah, they're really weird erasers too. Need to buy them a real eraser, but that's going to work okay. Okay, all right, here's what she's going to do. She's going to write up the top of that, Jacob's children. And what you guys are going to do is tell her who Jacob's children are, and she's going to put them on the board for us, okay? So, here we go. Let's name off Jacob's children. Reuben, Simeon, Judah, Levi, Joseph. I didn't catch that. Zebulun. Okay. Now listen, if you name a wrong one, like you name David or something, I'm gonna put it up on the board. Okay, it's going up there. All right. Anything else? Benjamin. Donna. Ooh, I got that one in there. what are, oh, you're just getting Dinah in. Okay. All right, now listen, I heard Naphtali there somewhere, yeah. And then I heard something else. I hear Gad. Okay. What? Dan. Okay, Issachar. Asher. Wasn't he one of the reindeers? Oh, Dasher. Okay. How many we got, guys? All right, we got 13 of them all together. Okay, so we know maybe we can somehow use your list here and not have to erase it, okay? But we know Dinah is not going to help us on this, okay? So you can erase Dinah. All right, now we're going to change it from the Jacob's children to what are the 12 tribes of Israel, okay? Now, I know you're thinking right off, well, they're the same. Well, let's take a look and see if that really works out like that, okay? Okay, so we're going to mark through Levi and mark through Joseph. Now, Levi's name comes up a lot, but as far as getting part of that possession of the land, Levi actually gets cities given to him and not a land per se. Okay, so that's why, because you'd see Levi's name everywhere, and you might think, well, Levi's part of it, so he's part of it in that way, but he's not part of the tribes I'm looking for. Joseph got marked out, so I think, guys, we're down to 10 here. We need to get to 12. We got Manasseh, and we've got Ephraim. And Gina draws a line here that Manasseh has just come in for Joseph. And also Ephraim has just come in for Joseph. So we have two people who have taken Joseph's place. Okay. Wow. You guys did really good on that. So, yeah, thank you very much. So see how much prettier her writing is than mine? All right. So let's do this for a second here. Now that we got all this out of the way, let's think about Joseph here. If we're going to give a quick rundown of Joseph's story, and we're going to think about that, would you guys say that Joseph might be the favorite of Jacob, Israel will call him? Okay, we would say that that's very possible. Okay, and who is Joseph's mom, whenever you think about it? All right, Rachel. That's Rachel's firstborn, right? So this was his favorite pick wife. Now, not all these were by the wives. We could actually go and see how this all plays out, okay, if we wanted to. In fact, if we were going to do them, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah would be our first four, right, is how we would put them if we're going to put them in order. But let's think for a second here. So basically what we've got is Jacob has two wives, and then the wives have two handmaids, and basically Leah and Rachel, it looks like, are going to be in some kind of competition on having kids whenever you read through the story. So they have all these kids here, and finally Joseph, and then we get to the story of Joseph, and Joseph has a dream. Do you guys remember him having a dream? And that dream kind of give the brothers, and I put it up on the screen there a little bit. It had to do with the moon and the stars, and then it had to do with some gardening out there. Well, what bowed down. Everything seemed to be centered around Joseph. So Joseph tells them, like, hey, this is my dream, and everything bowed down to me. Even his dad is not sure what to make of this. And his brothers, you see that coat of many colors? They were not happy about that thing. His dad gave him that coat, and it's just like Joseph is not well liked. So basically Joseph gets sent out to his brothers, check on them, and guess what happens? They are ready to kill Joseph. You remember that story? Yeah, and so Joseph basically gets thrown into slavery, to make a long story short, and he's going to end up where? He's going to end up in Egypt. So I think whenever all that happened to him, with going into slavery, was it Dothan, if I'm right, is the place there that happened? And then basically he'll end up in Egypt. But he seems to be an interpreter of dreams. We saw it happen with Potiphar's wife. You remember that whole nasty little story right there? And then he gets thrown. And then in Egypt, you know, he's able to basically save a nation through interpreting dreams, and he's put in second in charge there. During that time, Joseph marries an Egyptian. Looks like that's where he's going to spend his life. Why not? So he marries somebody. This is where I am. Joseph's brothers come. Whenever Joseph's brothers come, he knows them, but they don't know him. Must have been the new look Joseph had, or maybe he's older. I don't know what happened, but they don't recognize him. You remember the back and forth with that? And first he wants to see Benjamin. You know, he wants to see Benjamin. He gets Benjamin there. Then he doesn't, you know, I mean, he's playing games with him. And the last thing, he really wants his dad there. And ultimately, he can't stand it anymore. He bursts out and crying. He tells his brothers. And what do they think whenever they find out? They're like, oh, can you imagine all that haunting that's went on? And it haunted them, guys. You can't cover up sin. You might think you did a good job, but the first time that they had trouble, they felt like that this is all coming back to us. What we did to Joseph, yep. I mean, it wasn't like they'd forgotten about that whole incident. So, you know, we see this take place, and basically the reunion takes place. And then he talks his family into moving down there, and I believe they take the land of Goshen. Did you know that in the Egyptian eye, I think that sheep were an abomination right there? I believe so. They didn't like, the shepherds were an abomination. So, I mean, this was, I mean, you know, but anyway, they get a pretty good land, I think, where they end up at with this, with these, in the land. And so Joseph's dad, Jacob, even comes down here, happy to see his son. And, you know, I know they told him what had happened. We don't really get any remarks made about that. But basically, let's move way on forward to the end of not Joseph's life, Jacob's life. And Joseph has gotten married, and he has a couple of boys. And the boys' names are Ephraim and Manasseh. That's where they come into this. So let's go to Genesis 48, and let's look here, starting in verse 1 through 3, and somebody read that for us.
Now it came to pass after these things that Joseph was old, indeed your father is sick. And he took with him his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And Jacob was told, look, your son Joseph is coming. Israel strengthened himself and sat up on the bed. And Jacob said to Joseph, God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me.
All right, so you might notice the change up between Israel and Jacob. Even in the text, you're seeing it. We're talking about the same person here, okay? So what he's going to do here is put a blessing on Joseph. So in general, first of all, there's more blessings than this. But they're all in one chapter, the rest of the kids. This chapter right here is just basically about Joseph. So we followed Joseph for several chapters, and now suddenly we're following to this scene where these two boys are going to be blessed. Now, does anybody know between Ephraim and Manasseh, which one of these two are older? Manasseh is the older one right here. Now, let's go down to verse 4, and if somebody will read verse 4 and 5. Okay, so here, Jacob, I'll get, now guys, I can mess up my names really easy, so if I do, don't fear jumping in and saying, hey, that's the wrong name. Jacob here has taken these two boys, Ephraim and Manasseh, and he says, these are mine. These are mine. You know, first he told him, God bless me. And he said, these two here, and he doesn't just say, hey, Joseph, I'm going to we're going to call these kids mine. He says, these kids are mine just as the same as who? Yeah, so he brought up kids that we just put up here. He said, these two are mine. So how did these two get in here? Well, Jacob claimed them. You know, he said, these are my kids. Now, he's going to go on. Look, you have other kids. Those can be yours. But these two kids, they're mine. Now, for our time's sake, okay, and you know, it's worth reading the whole chapter. But let's go down to verse 13. Yeah. Let's go to 13 and let's do 13 and 14. And that's good. Okay.
Then Joseph took them both with his right hand, Ephraim toward Israel's left, and with his left hand Manasseh toward Israel's right, and brought them to Israel. But Israel stretched out his right hand and put it on the head of Ephraim the younger, and crossing his hands put his left on Manasseh's head, although Manasseh was the firstborn.
Okay, so Joseph brings them over here. And there's a picture you can kind of sort of see. He brings them over to be blessed. He brings them in order of who the oldest is. We've talked about that with Jacob and Esau. And as he brings them over to his dad does something like this. And is going to bless them like this. Okay? Now, let's just jump on down a little bit here to 17. Let's just read 17 and then we'll read 18. So, Joseph sees that his dad has crossed his hands. He thinks, my dad is confused and thinks this one's the older one, that one's the younger one. So, he tries to swap them to get this right. And, well, you know, it's like whenever that happens, let's read verse 18 and 19.
Place your right hand on his head. But his father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. He also will become a people, and he also will be great. However, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his descendants shall become a multitude of nations.
All right. So, you remember that statement that was made to Abraham way back when in chapter 17 about the multitude of nations? Suddenly we find that statement again, only this time it's Ephraim here that it's made to. So it's basically those hands crossed. Joseph, displeased about it, wants the older one blessed, and he expresses this to his dad, and his dad said, nope, this is the way it is, and blesses them like that. So Ephraim is the one that gets the blessing. So, you know, we might think, what in the world does this have to do with anything? But for now, understand, Ephraim gets the blessing. And there's going to be a time that we're going to be able to trail this just a little more. And whenever we come into a bigger picture with the nations, we're going to see that sometimes in prophetic statements, Ephraim is a code name for Israel. And we'll see that. So this is not something small. It's not something incidental. It's not something just to kind of pass up and see. I mean, God spent a whole chapter on this. I know there wasn't actually chapters where the Bible was written, but there's a lot of writing specifically about this incident here. Now, we go into chapter 49, and we're going to see the rest of the sons blessed. Now, not only blessed, but actually, I say blessed, it might be a little blessing, but basically, what he's told here is, look, I'm going to tell you what's going to befall you in the last days. So we see that statement again. The same one actually we looked at in Deuteronomy. So now Jacob is going to kind of prophesy to his sons. And he's basically telling them, look, this is how your end is going to come. It's what really is coming out of this. This is what's going to become of you. So, guys, for this study, the only one really we're going to look at is Judah. And you all know why. Because the Messiah comes from Judah. That's where Jesus came from. So we want to take a look at that one. Excuse me. So if we go down to Genesis 49:8, and we read 8 through 10, we will see this blessing.
Judah, your brothers will praise you. Your hand will be on the necks of your enemies. Your father's sons will bow down to you. Judah is a young lion, my son. You return from the kill. He crouches, he lies down like a lion, or a lioness who dares to rouse him. The scepter will not depart from Judah, or the staff from between his feet, until he whose right it is comes, and the obedience of the people belongs to him.
Okay, well, everybody's always got different versions, and my wife is carrying around one that took away my point right away, right there. All right. He says, if you look at verse 10, he tells Judah, the scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet until Shiloh comes. Now, guys, if you look up a definition for that word Shiloh, you're going to find the word Messiah there. Like in some shape or form, that word was associated with Messiah. Now, all I can tell you is I'm not a Hebrew scholar or anything like that, or a Greek scholar or anything like that, but I'm just telling you, if you research that particular word, it's going to lead you to Messiah, which makes perfect sense. So basically it's saying, look, Judah, the ruler, this scepter is not going to leave you until the Messiah comes. So it kind of puts a timeline on things, really, if you think about it. It's saying you're going to be the ruler until that happens. Okay. Now, so let me say this for this. Basically, here's what we've had happen. Is Joseph, basically, the birthright and the blessing are running through Joseph. But the ruler is running through Judah. Okay? Now, I can confirm this for you, that what I'm telling you is true by going over to 1 Chronicles in chapter 1. So, let's go over to 1 Chronicles in chapter 1 and 2, and somebody read that for us. First Chronicles chapter, I hope I said 5. Did I say 5? I didn't even come close to saying 5. Did you ever meet anybody who can read something off their page and say something else? That's me. Okay, it's First Chronicles chapter 5, verse 1 and 2. Okay, so here's some things here that we can kind of see in what's going on to help us to understand. Is basically, whenever we see Joseph and it talks about the sons of Joseph, we know that we're seeing Ephraim, Manasseh, and basically to Ephraim here, but that birthright and that blessing of a multitude of nations is actually going through Ephraim, and Judah, well, he's going to be the ruler right there. And we know what's coming through Judah is the Messiah. Okay, so guys, here's what we're going to do. We're getting ready to step into a divided kingdom to see how this actually plays out, because actually the very things we read about are going to play part in what's going to take place here as we follow it through in this divided kingdom. So hopefully we've done a good job of stepping it through where it's kind of plain and simple, but we went from Abraham to it's Isaac. We went from Isaac to Jacob, and we went from Jacob to Joseph, and we went from Joseph to Ephraim. Okay? And then we looked and we got a confirmation from 1 Chronicles chapter 5 that the birthright and that blessing, we already know the blessing through Ephraim went there to there, but yet the ruler is going to come from Judah. Okay, so knowing that, we're going to see how this thing plays out from going to individual people to a nation and how it's going to play out in the nation, okay? We're going to take a break right now, I think. We're probably good. I think yesterday we did about a 15 or something like that, so we'll try to keep it about there. So looks like they've got a lot of good snacks for you and stuff, I guess, out there again. All right. Okay, guys, we'll pick up here in about 15. I don't know who all's bringing in all that food and stuff. I know it's a group effort from what I hear, but your work at this will not be forgotten, that is sure. That makes it that much better. It really kind of makes it work out good. All right, guys, so what we need to do here is we brought it up this far as with the people of Jacob and his kids, and we narrowed it down to Ephraim, and we also looked at Judah there. So, you know, what we're kind of following some threads through Scripture here. Judah's the one we're familiar with. It's Ephraim that throws us a little bit. Not used to seeing that name come out in anything, and it does appear that there's some time spent on that in the text, especially when you consider the very statement made to Abraham passes down into Ephraim right there. So, what we want to look at here, and this is where it gets hard. I know where I want to get to tonight. I don't know if I can or not. I don't like just covering this stuff in short. I know you guys have been working with these things a little bit, but still, you know, I like to build the case for what all went on for you guys, just for the sake of how this is going to go down. And I promise you we're going somewhere with all this. The first king of Israel, first of all, before we had kings, we had judges. Now, if you've never read the book of Judges, I will tell you, put Ethan up here and, you know, turn him loose, tell him, hey, do a sermons on the book of Judges, and you'll hear, it's a very exciting book. When you say that, Gina, I mean, there's some of the most unique things that go on in that, but you have judges before you have kings, and the last judge is who? Samuel. And Samuel's sons are rejected by the people. They don't want to have them to be judges, and they say, we want a king, and they make that terrible statement, we want to be like all the other nations. So it's kind of bad, you know, in their thought. And they're warned. They were warned before, but now they're warned again. What's going to happen? You got a king. Doesn't matter. We're going to get a king. The first king is Saul. Now, you and I both know that Saul really didn't turn out that well. Saul was, he's a head taller than everybody else. He was a tall fella. Must have been a good warrior. But, I mean, if you read through the stories, Saul doesn't do anything until he's sure of it. That would be what I would say about Saul. And then whenever he is sure of it, and everybody's all beat down and he thinks there's a chance, he'll say, come on, guys, let's go get him. I mean, whatever it is. And then we got the whole sacrificing thing, and, you know, he's not going to go do anything without that, and since we can't get anybody there to do it, then he's going to do it. And that's where he gets in trouble, and basically his kingship's taken away from him by God before he ever loses that kingship. And we know the kingship is going to David. That's who it's going to go to. And Saul will end up ruling for about 40 years. But during that rule, he's basically, let's see, how do I say this? He's a madman. That's what I would say. I mean, he is absolutely just not, I mean, the things he does is just, he shows that he can't get an answer from God. You know, he can't get God to speak to him in any way. And they use what's called the and the Thummim. That's one of the ways that they talk to God, something that the high priest had. Looks like, I don't know if it was 2 stones. I'm not sure how that worked. But the and the Thummim, he couldn't get God to talk to him through that. He couldn't get God to talk to him through the priesthood or through a prophet. There was no way that Saul could get God. And Saul, in desperation, ends up going to the witch at Endor. You guys remember that. But that happens. You know, 1st and 2nd Samuel are great books, guys. And you go reading those, it's hard to put those down because they have such a storyline that's taken place. And you see that how Saul wants David killed. And all that starts with a little incident over a big giant. You remember that? Like David comes up, sees the giant. You know, who's this person who defies the God of Israel? Well, I'll take him on. Yeah, and he takes him on, kills him. cuts his head off, and then we see that the people start singing a song. And it goes something like this. Saul has killed thousands, but David, they put this one line in it. I think if they thought it through, they might have not done it. But they said David has killed tens of thousands. Saul kind of caught that they were, kind of playing up David and down on him, and from that point on, he was ready to kill David. David, before he took the kingship, David is in a mess. That fella, he's down in Ziklag. He's in a place on the opposite side of the fence here. He's on the other side of the Philistines. He is on his way out to war with the Philistines against his own people if God didn't intervene. And basically the Philistine, soldiers, some of the higher ups are like, we don't want David fighting with us. Like, we don't trust this fella. Now the king trusted him. He's like, yeah, let him fight. And they're like, no. So anyway, God intervenes there, and as would have it, Saul dies, and so does his sons. You remember all this taking place? And then we're to David. And there's about 7 years there where David doesn't have the full kingdom, but then finally, he's got it all. It's all under his rule. And this David has the whole house of Israel under him. All is one. But that's kind of just reading the story and seeing how it happens. But so we have Israel, but we had a little bit divided there at first, but then it's all of it. And David will rule for about 40 years. And then we have David's son Solomon. And Solomon was said to be what? Wisest man. He had in all his wisdom, he had 700 wives and 300 concubines. And I'll be the first to tell you, I have never understood exactly what a concubine is. It's sort of a wife, but not a wife. But anyway, he had 300 of concubines. So about 1,000 women. Now let me tell you about a lot of these marriages of Solomon. Don't think that he didn't think that if I marry so-and-so, then that'll give me political ground in this country. Okay? And maybe they'll help me by giving me this. So he was very smart in his thinking of how, of who he married and what he married. But you know what that did to him? Because God had said in the law not to do that. Okay? There was a lot of things Solomon did that God told him not to do. I've never understood. It's a hard mix between wisdom and some of the things that Solomon does. But basically, they tore Solomon's heart away, and he started following other gods. It's really hard to believe that this could happen, but it does. So let's go to 1 Kings chapter 11. And if somebody read 9 through 13, we're going to get a little look at this on what's going to take place because of how Solomon was acting. Now, far as the kingdom goes, in Solomon's day, it grew. And it was really time of peace. And things looked good, but not so good. Okay? 11, 9 through 13 in 1 Kings.
Now the Lord was angry with Solomon because his heart was turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice and had commanded him concerning this thing that he should not go after other gods. But he did not observe what the Lord had commanded. So the Lord said to Solomon, because you have done this, and you have not kept my covenant and my statutes, which I have commanded you, I will surely tear the kingdom from you, and will give it to your servant. Nevertheless, I will not do it in your days for the sake of your father David, but I will tear out of the hand of your son. However, I will not tear away all the kingdom, but I will give one tribe to your son for the sake of my servant David, and for the sake of Jerusalem, which I have chosen.
All right, so you see how Solomon is told what's going to happen because of how he's acted. The kingdom's going to be torn away, but there's going to be one little piece of it, one tribe left for David's sake. Okay, because God had made promises to David there, and I think you have those in your notes somewhere. I don't know if I've skipped over those or not, but maybe they'll come to us here in a little while if I haven't. So, there's going to be Solomon's son is named Rehoboam. Okay, that's Solomon's son. The servant there that's being talked about is a fellow by the name of Jeroboam. And evidently he was a mighty warrior too. But whenever Solomon catches winds of this, I believe Jeroboam takes off for a while. And if I remember right, he takes off to Egypt. I think him taking off to Egypt is a little bit important in some events that take place here real shortly. It's going to take place. But basically, let's see here. To make a long story short, Rehoboam, the people want to know how Rehoboam is going to rule. And Rehoboam takes his advice from young people his age. And whenever he does, basically, well, it's going to be harder than it was with my dad. And things are going to be terrible. And you're going to like it. Well, surprisingly enough to Rehoboam, they're like, nope. And 10 tribes walk away from that. So Rehoboam gets the idea that he's going to go back after them. But let's look in 1 Kings chapter 12, and let's look at verse 20 through 24, if anybody will read that for us.
I got it. And it came about when all Israel heard that Jeroboam had returned, they sent and called him to the assembly and made him king over all Israel. None but the tribe of Judah followed the house of David. Now, when Rehoboam had come to Jerusalem, he assembled all the house of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin, 180,000 chosen men who were warriors, to fight against the house of Israel, to restore the king of Rehoboam and the son of Solomon. What did you say?
It's 24.
But the word of God came to, I don't know how to say that, Shemaiah, the man of God, saying, Speak to Rehoboam and the son of Solomon, king of Judah, and to all the house of Judah and Benjamin, and to the rest of the people, saying, Thus says the Lord, you must not go up and fight against your relatives, the sons of Israel. Return every man to his house, for this thing has come to me. So they listened to the word of the Lord and returned and went their way according to the word of the Lord.
All right, so I'm going to try making a little map on here. So Rehoboam was going to try to reestablish it. You all got that in that. And you notice that whenever he was going to do it, that God got involved and said, nope, this is my working. I tell you what you do see in there, in that text, that you see the prophecy and then you see how the fulfillment comes about. A lot of times we just see some kind of, it is miraculous because God's behind it, but there's things that happen politically and otherwise that, you look at in the chapter and you see how Rehoboam actually played a part in causing it, but you see that it was God behind it all. Okay, so let's see here. Yeah, this is not very good. Okay, yeah, that didn't work out at all. All right. Well, hopefully you guys know that this is the Dead Sea. It's hard for me to believe you couldn't tell that by looking at it, right? Now, this would then be what right here? Well, this would be the Jordan River, okay? Because the Jordan River runs between the Dead Sea, and although this is way too big, what is this up here? That's the Sea of Galilee up there. Now, the Euphrates is kind of over here, is where it is, and the Tigris located over here. So we're going to put a line about right here, okay? And on that line, we're going to write up here is Rael, and down here we're going to write Judah. Okay, now, we now have a divided kingdom. We have Israel and Judah. Now, just for making mention of it, and I haven't made anything out of it, but guess where Jeroboam is from? He's from Ephraim. I just thought that was curious. Anyway, so Judah down here is going to run the line of David. We're not going to see a king go out of the line of David. But this line up here, Jeroboam starts with, and then up on the picture, there's a little picture up there to kind of, picture's a lot better than mine, honestly. Kind of, a little bit, anyway. But anyway, you can kind of get a picture for this. Now, know that Judah also encloses one more tribe. What is that? Benjamin. Benjamin was kind of encircled inside of Judah there. So Benjamin is along with it. I know sometimes the reading, you think, no, it just says one tribe. Well, look a little more, you'll see Benjamin's kind of listed in there too. So we have 10 tribes up here making up Israel, and we have 2 tribes making up Judah here. So we now are in the middle of a divided kingdom. And as we first start that, we start with Jeroboam. And for the life of me, I've never exactly understood this, but there is promises that that was made to David, okay? And we're not going to read those, but if you went to 2 Samuel 7, 12 through 16, you would see promises that the kingship was going to remain with him basically until the Messiah got here. That's where it was going to. So, and we know that. We know that from looking at the New Testament. We could follow David. It had to be from the line of David, right? Okay, that Jesus had to come from there. All right, so, once again, we kind of got that descendant thing. You started out with Eve, and then we could, you moved to Shem, and technically we could say Noah, and then Abraham, and then Isaac, and then Jacob, and then from Jacob we moved to the 12 tribes right there, and we're looking at Judah, and we're looking at Ephraim. We're kind of trying to watch how this thing goes, and you notice now that Israel, who was the name of a person, is also representing now the name of a nation. And then we have Judah down here, which represents one of the 12 tribes like that. So, we got all these things going on, and Jeroboam is king. Now, let's go to 1 Kings chapter 12, and I want someone to read verses 26 through 33. I know that's pretty big. If you can do that, that would be great. If you go back and you read the whole story of Jeroboam, it's very hard to understand how he got to this point. Because God had told him that he was going to give him part of this kingdom. I mean, it wasn't like he took it or they threw him in there. I mean, this was the person that God had told was going to be the one to take this better part of the kingdom that Solomon was going to lose. So understanding what goes on here is a bit confusing, but you got to realize he did take off to Egypt for a while in trying to save his life. But anyway, so he's king. Well, he gets to thinking, we've got a dividing line here, and sitting below that dividing line is Jerusalem. Now, God had said in Deuteronomy 16:16 that the place that I tell you, because it wasn't defined at that time, but wherever that place is that I tell you, you're going to go there. Your males are going to go there 3 times a year. Okay? So we're not going to discuss any more right now, but hopefully we do, because it's really about the Feast of Israel right there. Okay? There were some things that went on that Israel had to do. They had these feast days. And even though we just want to do it in short right now, does anybody know what one of those feasts would be? Feast of Booths is one. That's one that happens later in our September, October is when that one takes place. And the Feast of Booths is also called the Feast of Tabernacles. But basically they build these little tents about that time. All right, can anybody think of any more? Passover, okay? There was Passover, and then Passover was a one-day feast that was attached to what was called the Feast of Unleavened Bread right there. And that was for 7 days. But that's like the start of their year right there, is that Passover feast. And we're all familiar with that, and that's in our March and April is when it'll be set. And then what else can you think of? The Feast of Weeks. And the Feast of Weeks is what we really are familiar with that one is in Acts in chapter 2, whenever it says, when the day of Pentecost had fully come. That was part of that Feast of Weeks right there that's happened. Penny, that first part meant 50. So basically, 50 days after the Passover, I think it's the Sabbath after the Passover was a Sabbath, I have to think. 50 days after that is whenever that feast took place right there. And that's another 7-day feast. So basically, and then we have things like the Day of Atonement in there. You've heard of the Day of Atonement, right? Okay, we have the Festival of the New Moon. So we have some other stuff go on, but basically we'll say it like this. For Passover, for Pentecost, and for Feast of the Tabernacles, they were to be back at the city that God, or place that God would choose, and that was Jerusalem. So, Jeroboam knows this. He's like, how are we ever going to hold the people up here if they're constantly traveling back over the border to go to these feasts at Jerusalem? So Jeroboam gets smart. He sets up down here at Bethel, right on the border. Beth, T-H-E-L. That really does say Bethel there. He sets up at Bethel an altar, and then he goes way up here to a place called Dan. Oh, I like that better, Dan, 3 letters. That's good. He sets up an altar up there. Now, in both places, he puts golden calves. You got to think about this, okay? Because it's like, okay, well, we know what we can do. We'll put a place for them to worship here, and we'll put a place for them to worship here. So there should be no need for anybody to leave the country. And now what we'll do, those Levite priests, they're going to kind of kick about this. So let's put our own priest in place. So he puts his own priest. Did you catch that? Whenever we read that, he puts those people in place to do this. So, I mean, guys, we've got the start of a mess right here. Basically, whenever they start these feasts, you might notice he's putting it real close to the same time. Did you notice that part? Yeah, he did that. So basically, there's going to be no need for you to go back to Jerusalem. We've given you places to worship. And I believe, I'd have to go back and look at this, but I think he said something like, this is the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt. And he's actually is he using God's personal name there whenever he's doing that? I have to look at that and see if that's how that's brought across. Anytime in your English Bible, if it shows it, if the word Lord is L-O-R-D, all capital, that's the word Yahweh that's a personal name for God. And they usually show that as Lord in most Bibles. And usually, a lot of Bibles will capitalize those 4 letters to let you know that it's not a normal word for Lord, but it's actually a personal name of God. I have to go back and look at that. But the whole scene just doesn't make any sense. It's like he should have known better, but he doesn't. So he goes ahead and he does this. And here he puts them worshiping here a golden calf, and he puts them worshiping here a golden calf. And guys, what happens here at this scene never leaves. These people never recover from that, and God will constantly bring up Jeroboam's name as leading these people astray. So what happens here in Israel, at this point, it is a downhill run. Would you believe in Israel, in all their kings, they never have a good one? Now, wouldn't that be something right there? I know some of y'all thinking the same thing, right? But no, I'm saying that they never have a good one. Now, Judah will be a little bit different. Judah will have some good kings. Judah will have some bad kings. But in Judah's line, it remains steady. It's always from David right there. Everybody is a descendant. Everybody is a son right there. But in this place over here in Israel, well, some dynasty gets killed off and another one started. So we're not going to spend a lot of time in here. But just for a little, we want to look about in the middle of it. And in the middle of this kingdom right here, at the time whenever things are really horrible on Israel's side, Israel, we have Ahab. Now, whenever Ahab gets the kingdom, his wife's name is who? Well, I just saw it on the board, so it's Jezebel. And I've never been for sure who's really ruling the kingdom, guys, whenever Jezebel was there. Jezebel was a Phoenician queen. Her dad was a king. They brought in other gods. That last name, Baal, is no accident right there. You know, it is from the god of Baal that they serve right there. So if you remember anybody there was a prophet that served about this time, around the time of Ahab, and his name started with an E. Who do you think that was? It was Elijah. And they did not like Elijah. but yet, some ways, Ahab did seem to respect him at times. But anyway, Elijah brought a lot of bad news. But there was finally a showdown at a place where I come from called Mount Carmel. Well, I don't think it was the same Mount Carmel. But at Mount Carmel, that showdown, do you remember what Elijah asked the people? He wanted to know, who do you think God is? Is God God or is God Baal? And what did the people answer? We don't know. They were silent about it. They wouldn't even say. Do you remember how that scene played out? Remember that the prophets of Baal call down fire and try to get that altar to light and nothing happens. And Elijah actually makes some fun of them at that time. And then Elijah, remember what he does? He pours water on all that and gets it soaked, and then wham, comes fire. And then all the prophets die. And then after all the prophets die, basically Jezebel gets word, and Elijah goes on the run, and his mood changes, and all that goes on through there. But I'm telling you, Jezebel, she's a bad one now. You remember the story of Naboth's vineyard? You ever heard that one before? Basically, Ahab wanted to buy this vineyard from Naboth, and Naboth, because of his family, wouldn't sell it to him. Well, you know what Ahab did? Ahab went inside to his bed and started pouting like a 3-year-old. Jezebel come in and saw it, wanted to know what was wrong. And he told her what had happened. She got rid of Naboth. And that won't be the only time we hear something about that story, because there'll be some revenge happen with that. Basically, there's another king over on Judah's side, Jehoshaphat. For whatever reason, Jehoshaphat makes friends with Ahab. And he seems, in my mind, I just think Jehoshaphat thought through peace we can restore this kingdom and we can work together and we'll be better than just one of us. I really think he had something in his head. Well, Jehoshaphat and Ahab were close enough that their kids marry. And, I've got it. Good. Jezebel and Ahab's child is named Athaliah. And the other side of Jehoshaphat's is Jehoram. Now let me tell you about this area of Scripture. It's really sticky. Here's why. Because everybody's named the same thing. If you look on Israel's side, we got the same line of names running. On Judah's side, we got the same line of names. Why couldn't we name somebody a different name? I don't know. And then some of them seem to have more than one name. So if you're trying to read through this, it's how am I supposed to keep all this stuff straight? So let's see, where can I take you to? We're just going to skip down through there. Okay, so we're going to go about to 2 Kings chapter 9 and verse 20, because I want to read a little bit about a fella who God sends in during what I call the worst time in the days of Israel, and they've even got Judah drug into it, that God sends this fella named Jehu. And Jehu, I call him Jehu the Enforcer, because he is basically going to take everybody out, is what he's going to do. So I just want you to get a picture of this dude. So Jehu is going to eventually end up to be king of Israel. Okay, that's what's going to happen with him. But for now, he's not there yet, but he is coming. And he is coming in a hurry. And now Ahab is long gone and Jehoshaphat's gone. And now we're starting to see the rule of the kings. And then we're starting to see the grandkids come along. So, we're seeing this messed up disaster. And if somebody read verse 20, oh my goodness, who's going to do this through 37, guys? Please tell me someone's brave.
Starting in 20.
Yes.
37.
Yes.
And there won't be any weird names, right?
Jehu. Phew.
All right. The watchman reported, he came even to them, and he did not return. And the driving is like the driving of Jehu, the son of Nimshi, for he drives furiously. Then Joram said, "Get ready, And they made his chariot ready. Joram, king of Israel, and Ahaziah, king of Judah, went out, each in his chariot, and they went out to meet Jehu, and found him in the property of Naboth the Jezreelite. When Joram saw Jehu, he said, "Is it peace, Jehu?" And he answered, "What peace, so long as the harlotries of your mother Jezebel and her witchcrafts are so many?" So Joram reigned about and fled, and said to Ahaziah, "There is treachery, O Ahaziah." And Jehu drew his bow with his full strength, and shot Joram between his arms, and the arrow went through his heart, and he sank in his chariot. Then Jehu said to Bidkar, his officer, "Take him up and cast him into the property of his field Naboth the Jezreelite. For I remember when you and I were riding together after Ahab his father, that the Lord laid this oracle against him. Surely I have seen yesterday the blood of Naboth and the blood of his sons, says the Lord, and I will repay you in this property, says the Lord. Now then, take and cast him into the property according to the word of the Lord." When Ahaziah the king of Judah saw this, he fled by the way of the garden house. And Jehu pursued him and said, "Shoot him too in the chariot." So they shot him at the ascent of Gur, which is at Iblim. But he fled to Megiddo and died there. Then his servants carried him in a chariot to Jerusalem and buried him in his grave with his fathers in the city of David. Now, in the 11th year of Joram, the son of Ahab, Ahaziah became king over Judah. When Jehu came to Jezreel, Jezebel heard of it, and she painted her eyes and adorned her head and looked out the window. As Jehu entered the gate, she said, "Is it well, Zimri, your master's murderer?" Then he lifted up his face to the window and said, "Who is on my side? Who?" And 2 or 3 officials looked down at him. He said, "Throw her down." So they threw her down, and some of her blood was sprinkled on the wall and on the horses, and he trampled her underfoot. When he came in, he ate and drank, and said, "See now to this cursed woman and bury her, for she is a king's daughter." They went to bury her, but they found nothing more of her than the skull and the feet and the palms of her hands. Therefore they returned and told him. And he said, "This is the word of the Lord, which he spoke by his servant Elijah the Tishbite, saying, In the property of Jezreel the dog shall eat the flesh of Jezebel, and the corpse of Jezebel will be as dung on the face of the field in the property of Jezreel, so they cannot say, This is Jezebel."
That dude is mean. He is really mean. I mean, there is no mercy. Now, I don't know. It appears to me from the reading that Jehu did what God wanted him to do. But then later in chapter 10, verse 31, it says, "But Jehu was not careful to walk in the law of the Lord and the God of Israel with all his heart." Excuse me. He did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam, guys. Backed him up all the way to the beginning. And it says, "which he made Israel sin." So, Jehu, I don't know exactly what had happened there. But whatever it wasn't good. And I really, really, really want to get in some stuff. So I'm going to try to shorten a couple of things here. If you see that text there, 2 Kings 17, we're not going to read all that right now. But basically, what I want you to know is that Israel is going to fall. They're not going to get any better. And basically, the Assyrian army is going to take them into captivity. And when they do, they're basically going to take them in such a way that they move the people out. And I don't know if you don't have any pictures of that? No? That's all you got? Okay. And maybe you even got a map in there. But if you see some arrows pointing, it's showing you that they take the people out of Israel and they move them far away, and then they bring people back in. Maybe remember a little about this. Whenever that happens, basically in the area of Samaria, the people start complaining. They said that we're getting eaten by lions and there's bad things happening. They said because we don't know the God of this land. So they brought some priests back in to teach them about the God of the land. And the scripture says that they started worshiping God, but they never quit worshiping their other gods. So, you know, those people, the Samaritans in the New Testament that are so poorly disliked by the Jews, well, that's why. And then there's some other weird things that go on. That Mount Gerizim, I don't know if Jeroboam put things up there or what, but there was a lot of mystery. You know, go back and look at John chapter 4, remember that Samaritan, the lady at the well, the woman at the well, she was a Samaritan. Remember what she does? She points to that mountain. She says, our people say we should worship here at this mountain. Your people say it's in Jerusalem. Where is it? Remember that? Okay, she's pointing to that Mount Gerizim there. So some weird things took place that they had placed as this is where God's at and this is where it is and whenever it wasn't. So basically know that Israel falls in 722 BC and they're gone. Okay, now Judah, they hang around a bit longer. They actually hang around until an empire change. The Assyrian Empire collapses to the Babylonians. The leader of the Babylonians at the time is a fellow by the name of Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar's son is none other than Nebuchadnezzar. Now I'm going to get it wrong. Nebuchadnezzar, okay? And Nebuchadnezzar will actually take Jerusalem siege. He'll do that in 3 sieges, or 3, whatever you want to call them, 3 waves. And one of those waves, people like Daniel will actually get taken up in. Remember Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Yeah, they get taken up in that. But that happens, and in that last wave, you know, whenever Nebuchadnezzar comes into Jerusalem, he destroys the city, he destroys their temple, and then he carries the stuff out of the temple back to Babylon. You remember that story about what his grandson, and basically his grandson's having a party there, and whenever he's having a party, he goes and he gets some of the articles from the temple and brings them in there for people to drink out of. And remember that hand shows up on the wall, and what's it, meanie, tinkle, farson, something like that is what it says. And then he basically melts whenever he sees that, a hand writing on the wall. But all those things are connected with what went on whenever Judah fell. But now what I really want you to remember is whenever these things are happening, you know, in the back half of the book of your Bible, the prophets, yeah, those prophets are prophesying to Israel and Judah. And we can kind of look and see, because they're actually saying sometimes, O house of Israel, and sometimes, O house of Judah, and sometimes they're even using the word Ephraim. Now, whenever we see those things, it's going to be really important. But for us right now, there's going to be a return of Judah. Okay? Judah was clearly prophesied to return. Does anybody remember how many years? 70 years. 70 years, and they were going to return. Jeremiah is the prophet that prophesies that in Jeremiah 29, 1 and 2. And then it's said over and over again in 2 Chronicles, you see it. And then even in Daniel chapter 9, verse 2, he makes a quote of Jeremiah. And then in Ezra, they refer to Jeremiah's prophecy. So it's quite clear that Judah is returning, and they're going to do in 70 years. Okay? That's how that's going to go down. Did they return in 70 years? Yes, they returned in 70 years. And Ezra and Nehemiah are the books that record that. Whenever they went and saw the temple, some of the older ones went back with them, and they kind of weren't so impressed. It wasn't like Solomon's temple that he had built. Didn't have that glory like that Solomon's had. So some of them was a little disappointed, but they rebuilt the walls and they rebuilt the temple. So all that was done in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. Meanwhile, our story kind of centers around Israel. And we are quickly running out of time here. But I want you guys to go to Hosea, so if nothing else, at least we can kind of get a feel for what we want to do here. Hosea in chapter 1, and if somebody will read verse 1 and 2. Uh-huh. All right, so it kind of tells us when this book was written, at least among the kings, and what it makes if we look it up, we're going to be around 789 to 745 BC. Now, when did we say Israel fell? 722 BC. So it's before the fall of Israel and way before the fall of Judah. So what we're going to see in the book is actually it's going to mention, he's got some prophecies going to go out to Judah, but he's got some prophecies that's going to go to Israel. And those are going to become real important because we're going to see in modern day terms, people are taking what's said here and applying it to Israel today. And I'm going to show you how they're doing that, what part of that are they doing, and I'm going to also show you why it really shouldn't apply to that. And we'll try to get all that explained. But for now, Hosea has to take a wife, and what's his wife supposed to be? She's a harlot or a prostitute. That's his wife. Yep, that's what the prophet's told to take. Go get yourself a wife. Oh yeah, she needs to be a harlot. Why? Because that's how the nations acted. That's what they've done. So you go get yourself a wife of harlotry. And her name is going to be Gomer. Now Gomer is going to start having some kids. And we're going to at least get these kids' names down here so we can do that. All right, so let's look in, somebody will read verse 3 and 4. All right, remember me saying there was something that seemed like went more. The reason you think I'm dragging you through, why did I pick Jehu? I picked Jehu because he specifically makes it in this prophecy right here, in the sense that as far as what he did, seems to be there was so much bloodshed or something about that God's going to have a little redemption for that. So notice the first kid's name actually means something, is what we ought to know. There's meaning to that. It's not just some random name. Now, let's go ahead here with verse 6, and let's do that one.
Then she conceived again and gave birth to a daughter, and the Lord said to him, name her Lo-Ruhamah, for I will no longer have compassion on the house of Israel, that I should ever forgive them.
All right, I'm just going to write it like that, guys. Y'all don't want to see me spell compassion anyway. Okay, so basically this second kid's name is Lo-Ruhamah, and that means I'm not going to have any compassion. I'm not going to show any mercy. And who specifically did he name? The house of who? The house of Israel. He names off the house of Israel. Now, look in the next verse right there, in verse 5, right? No, what verse am I at? I just read 6, I'm sorry. Verse 7. It says, but I will have compassion on who? The house of Judah. So he said, I'm going to have compassion on the house of Judah, but I'm not going to have any mercy on the house of Israel. Okay? Now, let's look at verse 8. And somebody read that for us. Oh, and verse 9.
And the Lord said, name him Lo-Ruhamah, for you are not my people, and I am not your God.
All right. Basically, this name means you're not my people, and I'm not your God. And once again here, this is directed at the house of Israel. So in the house of Israel, he says, no mercy. You're not going to be a people, and I'm not going to be your God. To the house of Judah, he says, I'm going to show compassion to the house of Judah, but to the house of Israel, no compassion, and you're not a people, you're not going to be a God. Guys, to make it simple, we're out of time. We're going to pick this up tomorrow night. And what we've drugged through the Old Testament. Now we're getting ready to make our way into the New Testament with this, because we're going to look at these scriptures here. We're going to do a little bit more work in Hosea and try to get a little bit more picture. Won't spend much time, but then we'll see what some of the New Testament writers say about this. Okay? All right. Thank you, guys.